I think we'll start from the beginning of the parak again, just to make it go smooth. Hatay kishos. Somebody takes truma off of a squash. V'nimtzis morning is found to be. I should tell you, it's to you down on the base. 28. No, you're in wrong Masechta. Second Masechta in the volume. Yeah, that one. The other way. No, next page. You take truma off a squash, and it turns out that it was bitter. Avatiach means a melon. It turns out that it was rotten. Truma v'yachsaviyitrum. So it's truma, but we make you take truma off over again. Now this is a knas. In other words, we are a fine. You should have checked out before you did it. Since you didn't, so that we find you make you take off truma again. What? Yeah, taste it. Cut it open. You can taste, just can't eat. Right. If you take truma off a barrel of wine, and it would turn out to be vinegar. If you know it's vinegar, if you make the truma on wine, ain't no truma side of our truma. If it only became vinegar after you took truma off, I raised the truma. The time you took off truma was okay, so that's fine. If you're unclear, truma v'yachsav truma. It's truma. You have to return again. Again, we fine you. In that case, you have to take the truma over again. In all these cases where we fine you, harishona eina medamas ifnei atzma. The first truma, if it falls into a batch of chulin, does not make a mixture of truma and chulin. Rather, as long as there's 51% chulin versus 49% truma, that's sufficient to cancel the truma. Then you don't need 100 to 1. Then if somebody eats this truma, which is taken off, which were not truma, it's valid truma, and then he has to make restitution in the Kohen, he doesn't have to add on an additional fifth. And that is true also about the second truma, which is taken off when we find you that it's not full truma, and the Rabbanan didn't give the status of full truma, and therefore if it falls into something which is not truma, so it's bata barov, we don't need 100 as we normally say. Okay? Says the Gemara. Let's go to the Gemara. Nicha, first word line. Nicha avatiach v'nimtzei saruach. I understand the case of a melon which comes out to be rotten, that we find him in that respect because he should have checked out if it was rotten or not. Elakishus v'nimtzei smora, but the principle of squash is that if it's bitter, lo mori mikora, isn't it always bitter? There's also the thing of squash which turns bitter. Melons could rot, squash don't turn bitter. So if it was bitter, it means it was always bitter. So if it's always bitter, so it's rot, it's bad. But we learned at the end of the last paragraph that even something which is bad, if you made it truma, something which is good, but the evidence works. And we don't find, you go to hell for it perhaps, right? But we don't find you for it by making you take off truma again, right? So you'll burn in Gehenna for giving good on bad on good, but we don't make you do it over and over again. Yes. What? Obviously, this is one which is going to remain bitter regardless. Otherwise, someone would have mentioned something about that. Okay? Says the Gemara, Rabbi Yochanan said, "Also, osak is safek ochel." They made it like a safek, even though it's not a safek, because even though it was always bitter, they felt we should have tasted it before he took truma off it, and since he didn't taste it first, never going to fine you and make truma twice on it. Rabbi Yochanan asked to what extent, to what extent did they make this kishos, the squash, into a safek food? Does it mean, for instance, nitama tumas ochlin was going to be mitame tumas ochlin? Do we say no, since it may not be food, so therefore it's not mitame? Do we say v'sarvinos of betuma? That do we say that it becomes this truma becomes tame? That we have to burn it because it's mamish truma, and it's mamish truma. That whatever it becomes tame, we have to burn it. Or maybe we're toilet. Maybe once it becomes tame, we still don't know what to do with it, and we leave it around in questionable status until it itself rots, so we can throw it out. When a person eats it who's not supposed to Yisrael, does he have to pay a fifth to the Kohen or not? If this crop was made to Meiser Sheni and then eaten out to Yerushalmi, there's a person who does that get Makas Margus, eating Meiser Sheni out to Yerushalmi. We say this is not true bona fide, it's not true bona fide, I guess not true bona fide food. It's not true bona fide food, so if the Meiser Sheni is not a full Meiser Sheni. The Meiser Sheni is not a full Meiser Sheni, not going to get Malchus reading outside Yerushalayim. So it says more, Ireba, and furthermore, and more questions, if you made an Erev Tchumen with it, in other words, you put one of these things, which later turned out to be bitter, at the end of your 2,000 amos in one direction, do we say that Nasa Chamer Gamal, you become a donkey and a camel, which normally pull in different directions? Do we say that that's the case? Meaning that Erev Tchumen does work misafek, and therefore you only get misafek, and therefore you continue to get the 2,000 amos up to the Erev Tchumen, but you don't get the 4,000 amos past the Erev Tchumen, nor do you get on the other side of the city the 2,000 amos, which you would have gotten if not for the Erev Tchumen. The Erev Tchumen extends your area to the space you can walk 4,000 amos in one direction at the expense of the other directions. So the question is, here you burn the candle at both ends. You don't have you don't have the right to walk the additional 2,000 amos, but you do lose the 2,000 amos on the other side of the city. Am I making myself clear at all?
I thought you were only allowed the 2,000 amos in that direction.
Without the Erev Tavshilin, I could do like this. Now, when I put the Erev Tchumen here, when I do that here, then I get the extra big level out of here at the expense of this.
This is a given. This 2,000 is a given. And then beyond that, you only get in that direction at the expense of the other.
That's right, but if it's not food, so you lose this direction, you don't gain this direction. That's what it's saying. It's Chamar Gamal means, right, you come out both. That's our Shaila. Continues, you're asking the question, is it, to what extent is the Safek? Do we say it's a Safek, for instance, in this case, that you lose the other direction? Okay?
Yeah, why would
because we're mesupik if it's food or not. You have to take Erev Tchumen with food. This we don't know if it's food. So rotten and squash.
Yeah, so why lose? Just say that it doesn't take effect.
Because maybe it is food. They don't know.
So you get the worst of both.
Right, the worst of both worlds. Okay? Tamer Rabbi Yochanan. Furthermore, there we said Rabbi Yochanan says an interesting thing. The Rabbi Yochanan says, "K'vakiko shenitma b'safek b'shusa yachid." A loaf of bread which became tamei b'safek in Rishusa Yachid. So Rishusa Yachid by Safek Tumah we have to be stringent. Umagol b'Rishusa Rabim, and later on somebody touched it in Rishusa Rabim, right? So then one could make the case that since in Rishusa Yachid it was only tamei misafek, so therefore when he gets out, it's also only tamei misofek. One could say that in Rishus HaRabim, I lost my train of thought. Let me start it over again. But by a person who's has a suffix to Rishus HaYachid, so that is misafek tamei. Rabbi Yonah is saying even later on the object is transferred to Rishus HaRabim. Once it's paskin on the object that it's tamei, retains its character of tumah. Okay, you can't get rid of it, even if you transfer to Rishus HaYachid. Because suffix to Rishus HaRabim is tohar. So I might have thought that since it was only a suffix, and are determining that in Rishus HaYachid one maintains it as tar, has to do with as tummy, has to do with the fact that it's there. But when it leaves the domain, maybe I consider tar again. That's the question. Right. But so the bottom line here is to say it doesn't lose its character, even though the fact that it became a suffix to Rishus HaYachid is only a special halacha. Nonetheless, once this object leaves the Rishus HaYachid, it retains that shem tumah, even though now it stands out to suffix to Rishus HaRabim. Here the Gemara asks, what about here? V'acha tar, maybe here it's tar. The shein shtei sveikus. In other words, here maybe I'll say that it's a sveika. If the stuff is food whatsoever, even if it is food, so nonetheless, it's a suffix to Rishus HaYachid, right? So maybe I'll be mekel. In other words, since I have a sveika, maybe it overcomes the principle suffix to Rishus HaYachid sveiko tamei. Okay, all these questions I'm not going to answer. Tani b'shem Rabbi Yossi. We learned today Rabbi Yossi. Ein lucha mar b'kishus. There's nothing more bitter in the gourd ela tocho than its inside. Ketzoruose. What should you do? In other words, now he's arguing our Mishnah. In our Mishnah, we said that if you take a bitter squash, so you have to take truma twice. No chachmas. Rabbi Yossi says, no, not true. What you can do is you can add on the outer husk, which is soft to begin with, and be torem on the basis of that. Well, not soft, but bland, the opposite of bitter. So Tayashem Rabbi Yossi, the only place it's too bitter to eat is on the inside. So what do? Most of our chiton shelo take additional good squash and put it together with the good squash, which is within this gourd, right? And take truma off on the bad stuff. In other words, in this case, we say that he should add on and continue the process, opposed to starting the process from scratch. In our Mishnah, rather, the Mishnah said, you took up truma, you got to do it again. He said you don't have to do the entire process again, because the outer part of the squash is good. It retains its goodness. It's only the inner part which is bad. So therefore, just add on more trumas meiser or whatever it is to what you have. Okay. So so it's a motive chiton shelo term, just to add on to what you have superficially and take truma. Rabbi Yavin Bar Levi was astounded at this. He said, Darby asked the question, I'm sorry, I read that wrong. Rabbi Yavin Bar Levi, he asked the question, something which the Chachamim could have reckoned as to whether the pumpkins, I think that's what it means, as to whether the pumpkins are good or not. Yeah, what's the status of the bitterness of the pumpkins? Is taka the outer region more tame or less tame, more bitter or less bitter. So let them go and check, let them run a scientific experiment and see whether it's more bitter or less bitter. What does it mean that we have a machlokas here? The Tanakh holds that the whole thing has to be done over again. Rabbi Yossi holds you have to go over again what corresponds to Yad or Shel. Let's experiment. Let's see what's going on. Right? So it says a very cryptic answer. Which Ritbaz means they checked, but they don't remember what the results of the survey were. They lost the survey as to what it is. Okay, so that's why the Kavanaki has a different shot. And he says that they checked and they found a certain percentage one way, a certain percentage the other way. They didn't know how to define the entire classification, and that's why they left it difficult. Tani, we learned. Taram Chavitzirim says Megula. But Amzil took Truma off a jar of wine, and then he found the jar and covered it. Maybe a snake on it. Or Avatiach. The Torah Me'emanabel, Venim Tzadokon was found to have fang marks in it from a snake. So Truma, whatever he took off is Truma. V'yavtavi Truma, you take Truma again. Rabbi Yidam and Pazi and Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Yeshua and Levi said, now we're on top of Tesvav Amud Aleph.
Why is he being judged? That's an active nature.
That's true. I guess to make the Gzeira uniform. That in all cases you have Vitro.
He could have kept it out of in a box or
could have arranged the timing differently. I don't know.
We learned three things. Getting into the food.
Yeah, not the timing. He could have placed it somewhere else. You're right. Okay, so he should have placed somewhere else. I don't think so. I think it's just the part of the Gzeira. I don't think it's because he was Poshea here. I don't think so. It's not so much the Pshia. Maybe the snake locked over the top. It's just... I think it's just in order to make everything equal. Anyway, Rabbi Yehuda ben Pazi and Rabbi Shimon ben Levi again, now we're on top of Tezbom, and I've said, Lomrel and Imtza Nakur. That's only if you found it was already pierced after you took off Truma. Also litrom, but to take this stuff and use it to make truma, that's forbidden. Because maybe it was bitten by a snake. Rabbi Yaakov Techumia boy come Rabbi Yossi asked for Rabbi Yossi lo mistaber Rabbi Sharo so noiker. Maybe that's the only way you saw the snake actually attack it, but not what you found afterwards that it had holes in it. Amar Leisi said, if you're assuming that the snake perhaps didn't actually release venom, so even if you find a hole in it, how do you know that it had poison in it? In other words, if you're assuming that not every time does the snake eject poison, so maybe in this case there's no poison ejected. So since in this case there's no poison ejected, maybe or we should say that this is good for truma. No. Therefore he says there's no difference whether you saw it now being pierced or you saw just the tooth marks. If it's beforehand, so you can't use it to make truma. Okay? Again, does he know if the snake put venom into it? So Chevraya Bon Kumi Rabbi Yossi, the friends asked in front of Rabbi Yossi, Mabino Latame, why if I take truma of something tar with something tame intentionally, does that work? I am a Rosha. I'm going to burn, but it works. Yet here I'm saying if I intentionally take off from the stuff which is pierced by a snake, whether you saw it or not, that it doesn't work. So that's what I'll tell you why. Armalei said, Tomei be'inyonohu. The Tomei, it's still food. And that's why if you intended to do it, it can work. Ela shagar matuma, she said it's Tomei. Bilam hacha, but here, that which is pierced by a snake, afarhu, it's dirt. Since it's dirt, you can't use it to make truma. Okay? Somebody takes truma from barrels of wine. And so if it's vinegar on wine, it doesn't work. Rabbi Chia b'shem Rabbi Yochanan said to Rabbi, who's like Rabbi, who said that where you take from two different commodities, it's not going to work. Rabbi Yaakov Bar Achba b'shem Rabbi Yochanan said, Allah Gediva Rabbi, that no two commodities work. Rabbi Bar Kohen Boikom Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Bar Kohen asked in front of Rabbi Yossi, why was this statement repeated? Located Amar Rabbi Chia Bar Abba Shem Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Chia Rabba say name Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi v'Chaveiro. You don't have that, do you? You do have Rabbi Chaveiro? The Rebbe, where Rebbe argues with a friend of his, halacha Rebbe, halacha is like Rebbe, so we would have known to paskin like Rebbe, and meaning that vinegar and wine are not connected. So why do I need a special mishnah for that purpose? So why do we need somebody to say, single out that we paskin that way for our purposes? So, again, why do we need somebody to tell me that halacha is like Rebbe? Here, in this unique case, we're talking about vinegar and wine. Anyway, all over Shas, I know Allah is like Rebbe. So it's like, belt and suspenders. To tell me also here that Allah is like Rebbe, it's not necessary. So says the Gemara, I didn't finish that sequence yet. Loke Rabbi Chia Bar Abba Shem Rabbi Yochanan, Rebbe v'Chaveiro, halach Rebbe. If Rebbe argues with his friend, Allah is like Rebbe. So why do I need a special statement here? Rabbi Yonah said, "Ta'afilu Rebbe it's Rebbe Shimon, we still paskin like Rebbe." So why I need a special statement over here? They said, I'll tell you why. Because the tiny Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yossi b'Shema Aviv. Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yossi said in the name of his father that I forgot what he said.
I get if it goes according to their father, they should get the same inheritance. If it goes according to their mother, it depends what it's
I don't remember what he said. Where do we have Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi? Oh, in the last parak, that's right. Because Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yossi, in the last parak, said, in his machlokas with Rabbi, let's see if I can find it.
We don't say what
Oh, you got it. I don't have it yet. Where is it? Right. So there, Shmuel Rabbi Yossi said, name his father. About 10 lines up from the end of Yudalim Rav, so he could be Torah from vinegar on wine. Right? So therefore I might say that in this case, I should paskin like Rabbi Shmuel, name Rabbi Yossi his father. Right? Why should I assume that? Because Rabbi Yossi b'Shem Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Yossi himself said name Rabbi Yochanan, that Rabbi Yossi b'Chaveiro of Alochik Rabbi Yossi b'Chaveiro. The Rabbi Yossi argues with his friends, it looks like Rabbi Yossi. So the lot is born Meimar Avhocha. Okay, so you shouldn't got the conclusion that it's here, this way here as well. That's why you have to tell me it looks like Rabbi. Okay, in order to preclude the possibility of passing like Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Tzia, Rabbi Yaakov, Rabbi Mishem, Rabbi Yochanan, and Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Rabbi Tzia, Rabbi Yaakov, Rabbi Mishem, Rabbi Yochanan said, if you have machlokas are Meir and Rabbi Shimon, halachas like Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Shimon, machlokas is Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon, halach Rabbi Yehuda, halachas like Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Bar Yaakov Bar Idei, B'Shem Rabbi Yehuda, name Rabbi Yehuda said, it's Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Shimon, halach Rabbi Shimon. So Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Shimon argue that halachas follows Rabbi Shimon. Vein Tzorich L'mar goes out saying, so Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, halach Rabbi Yehuda. So Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda paskin, then Rabbi Yehuda states his psak first. We paskin like him. From this we derive that Rabbi Yehuda, the Rebbe, Shamun, sorry, Rabbi Shimon, oh boy, that's embarrassing. Rabbi Shimon halach Rabbi Yehuda halach Rabbi Yehuda. In other words, it's logical. If Rabbi Machlokes Rabbi Meir Rabbi Shimon looks like Rabbi Shimon, and Machlokes Rabbi Shimon Rabbi Yehuda looks like Rabbi Yehuda, then Machlokes Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda looks like. I get that right? I mean, I got that right. Minat Shama Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Shimon looks like Rabbi Yehuda. Didn't we say that outright before? Yeah, we did say that before.
In which case, so what is what at 3 colors?
Meir Rabbi Shimon. Oh, this is a different gear, so okay, fine. This is Rabbi Bar Yaakov. So you learn Rabbi Meir Rabbi Shimon, also like Rabbi Shimon. It goes out saying that Rabbi Meir Rabbi Yehuda halachas Rabbi Yehuda. And ever Kavah Chomer that halachas like Rabbi Yehuda over Rabbi Shimon. Okay. Minat Shom. Right, something like that. Minat Shom Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Shimon halachas Rabbi Yehuda. Okay, let's go back to the Mishnah. On page of Dalam base. You know, are you cold? I'm boiling. Because I want to open that door. You freeze?
I got sweaters.
Okay. I take off my jacket, but I'm not allowed to by protocol. Okay. Back to the Mishnah. Nafla. Nafla achas by the little bays. That's 3, 6, 7 lines down. Nafla achas me'im chulin. If one of them falls into chulin, ain't a medamasan. Meaning that if either of the two trumas which you took off, the one which you took off first, the one which Chazal make you take off, fall into chulin, they don't create meduma. Meduma is when vadai truma falls into something which is chulin or tevel. So midrabanan need 100 to 1 in order to cancel it. Midaraisa, it's cancel parov. So here, since Chazal were the ones who find you, so they gave you at least the nice advantage of that, not either of them creating meduma unless they both fall into the same pot. In which case you have to assume that one of them is the real one, and that one is going to create meduma in that pot. Okay? So nafla chasmi and chulin, one that falls into chulin, ain't medamosad, it doesn't create meduma. Nafla shnil, makamach, the second one falls somewhere else, ain't medamosad, so it's not medama the other one either. Nafla shteil, makamach, they both fall into the same place. Then medamos kiktana b'shneim, so it creates the meduma based on the amount which is in the smaller one. In other words, that's we give the benefit of doubt, assume that the smaller container is the one which contain that which is the true truma, not the large container. Okay, let's go back to the Gemara. Ketzad uose and Tezvav Amud Aleph, second white line. Ketzad uose no sin shteim lekohen. How does he work this? He took up 2 trumas, so he gives both of them to the Kohen. But Kohen knows the Kohen's got to pay him for one of them because one of them is not coming to the Kohen. Eizman noisin lo. Which one does the Baal Bayis have to give him for free? To make delo, to make tano. Does he have to give him the large one or the smaller one? So may I hand the Tanya for to? Oh no. Which one does the Kohen pay for? Does the Kohen give him the value of the large one or the small one? So it says Gemara, since we say that by meduma we assume it's the smaller one which is the one which is bona fide truma. So too when you give it to the Kohen, you assume it's the small one which is the bona fide truma. And that means when the Kohen reimburses you, he's got to reimburse you because of good he gives you the value of the larger one. Okay, next Mishnah. Hashutfim.
Second one, the widow comes to collect a ksuba, or...
Yeah, this is actually the third Mishnah in the parak, even though it's halacha base. Okay? Well, that's what's confusing me. I don't know.
He split the first.
What? He split the first. That's a good point. Okay. Hashutfim shator mu'izalzeh. Shutfim partners took truma on each other's property. This is a very interesting principle. They took on each other. In other words, I'm a partner with you in the field, and each of us takes truma on ourselves and the other guy. Okay? Not exactly. Similar things. Rabbi Akiva Omer Truma Shneim Truma. Rabbi Akiva says they're both truma. That's what I take on you is truma, what you take on me is truma. Chachomer me truma sarishon truma. Rabbi Chachom say no. Only the truma of the first guy is truma. And not the second guy. Now, why we think that is? Because by the time the second partner comes, he mapish truma. Truma's already been taken, right? The first guy's taken off the truma, so therefore the second guy's truma is not a valid truma, right?
Aren't both partners chayav to take truma off?
Right, but here each one is magnanimously acting on his part and the part of the other guy. So, but nonetheless, here only the first guy gets the right to be magnanimous, because once he's magnanimous, there's nothing left for the second guy, because he did all the second guy. So that's what it says according to Rabbi Akiva, right? According to Rabbi Akiva, right? Rabbi Yossi Omer. Rabbi Yossi Omer, Im Torah Marishon Kashir. If the first guy took off kashir, the right amount, ain't truma z'shein truma, then the truma second guy is not truma. If Torah Rishon, low Torah Rishon kashir, if the first guy did not take off the right amount, then truma z'shein truma, the truma the second guy is valid truma. We'll discuss that in the Gemara. Let's go to the Gemara. Turn to our base. Ba'me'anon kayami. What are we talking about? If they trust each other to do it, right? Each one relies on the other literally. So af Rabbi Akiva moide. So even Rabbi Akiva concedes. Right, you should only need one. Because the first guy who does it should work, just like Tanaka, just like Chacham say, right? Even Machin after Rabbi Akiva, they should agree that the first guy's truma is valid truma, the second guy's truma is not valid truma. If it's a case where they don't trust each other, so then Rabbi Akiva should be right. After Rabbanah, they should see the point of Rabbi Akiva. That neither of that both of theirs are truma, not just one of them, right?
Why aren't neither of them?
We're going to talk about that. This is what we're talking about. Bestam, where nobody specified anything. Rabbi Akiva says in that case, Stam on Einam Imachin. When nobody said anything, or there was no explicit intent. So then I say, Stama Einam Menachim, in general, they don't authorize each other. And that's why they both have to take off Truma. Rabbanah say, Stama Einam Menachim, when they don't specify, it's assumed that they are trusting each other. Now the Gemara asks your question, Dr. Spinell. Al Daiti the Rabbi Akiva, that the true of both of them is Truma. Say, Oshel Rishoin. So the first guy to take off Truma, let's analyze what he's taken off. Chetzio, the half of what he takes off, that's definitely Truma, because that's his own portion. But Chetzio, the second half, Tevel Tovel, and here it should be Lekulon. Not Lemaisris. It should be Lekulon. The second one, however, is Tevel Tovel Lekulon. Meaning, since the second half of what he was taking off was for the other guy, and the other guy's not memachim, he doesn't trust him, so therefore that second half is invalid, null, void, meaningless. It's just tevel. Okay? However, turn it around now. Seya Shoshniya, the second guy. So Chetzio, the first half he took off, of course, is valid truma. That's for himself. The Chetzio, the other half, it's tevel, but not complete tevel. Tevel Tovel only Lemaisris it should be. He's only Tevel for Maisris. Why? Because the first guy took off Truma on his own stuff. So the second guy is not taking off Truma on his own stuff and his friend's stuff. On his own stuff it works. On his friend's stuff it doesn't work. But his friend already took off Truma on his portion. So therefore what's all that's left to take off on this? Not Truma anymore, but only Meiser. Okay, so that's why it's Tevel Tovel and Meiser. It says more Lo Tzurcha. This I didn't even have to ask you. This is pashut. Dila, rather this. I have a question to ask you. Chatzi se'er shel sheni. Mausha tiftar chatzi se'er shel rishon. The half of the measure of the second guy can exempt the half a measure of the first guy. Now, what does this mean here? I forgot. 1 second.
The admonishment of Hashem makes a connection this day. To interrupt the reading of the person's God's admonishment demonstrated it is difficult to read the entire portion. Right. It shows they disdain that admonishment. So that's why
Oh, yeah, okay, fine. This is the case. This is a question. Question like this. Let's say the Gemara is taking an arbitrary figure. Each guy set aside a saw of truma. Now, the first guy's saw is made up of half a saw, which is his. That works. That's obvious. The second half of saw doesn't work at all, right? Because he's trying to take off truma on that which is not his, and the other guy's. That doesn't work. That's obvious too. The question is, however, even though it doesn't work, and it's not valid truma, when partner number 2 comes to take off truma off all of his part of the crop, does he have in mind to include also the part of his crop which the first guy took to unsuccessfully try and generate as truma? Or do I say his das is not on that? Because that amount already is considered to be, so to speak, distinct from the rest of the field. Okay? That's the question. Let's see it inside again. Lo tzurcha, that's not a question. Dila, rather this question. Chatzi se'er shel sheni, the second half of the first half of the second guy's truma, Mausha tiftar chatzi se'er shel rishon, can it exempt the half a se'er which the first guy, being a good fellow, tried to use to take off on me, even though that all came to naught?
Does it matter if the second part is new? The first part?
Well, then it would for sure work. Here we didn't know. So looking at kind of stam das again. The Shmina min Adon, let's read it from this case. Ariston, so a certain individual named Ariston. I say apparently brought fruits, the shiur in order to and wanted to take true of them. The shiur goes saka v'torah, and he left the fruit which he was taking the trumas off of. Taking the trumas for in a sack. He didn't reckon how much they're worth. Just so he left them in the sack. And then later on he found out that they were more than he thought.
Now the father died. That whole.
So we had no argument.
Yeah, they were more than he thought. In other words, basically, I should say more clearly, he had, let's say, 5 pounds in a sack of apples. So he wanted to take truma from somewhere else on these 5 pounds of apples. So he spilled the 5 pounds of apples on the floor, or on the table, it doesn't really matter, in order to spread them out, in order to make the truma process work. Then after the process is over, so then he goes back and he finds that there's more apples in the bag, which he had in the container, which he hadn't taken into account to begin with. So are they still tevel, or do I say that truma mistame applies to them as well, even though there was no specified intent? This is very similar to your Sameach makes the connection to Chometzer Pesach. I have in mind to be Mavato. Later on I find some areas which I didn't have in mind to be Mavato, but there was Chometz there. Do I say there's Stam Das that that's also included in the Bittul or not? So once I gave the example Chometz, you know what the answer is. What's the answer? Yes, it is included. Okay? So that's when the Shemitah, but yeah, the Gemara doesn't bring an example. Chometz rather brings from Zroim itself. Aristo and I say apparently brought fruit in order to be Torah. The shiur goes saka and inadvertently left some in his bag, the Torah, and he took truma off of it, of his crop. Asu the Kum Rabbi Yossi, the Maisa came from Rabbi Yossi. Varman, he said, Chazoke, we assume ala kol Torah, and that the truma applied to all of it equally, and therefore he doesn't have to take truma over again. Okay, as we say it by Chometz and Pesach. Rabbi Yossi, you don't have the header, right? One day after he died, we're on Mrs. Zuger, we're on top of Tezayin Amud Aleph. The top of Tezayin Amud Aleph, and we are where it says Makashir Torah, the third line. Rabbi Yossi says if he's Tarim Kashir, it works. If he's not Tarim Kashir, it doesn't work. What's a shiur? No true Truma has no shiur d'oraisa. All shiur my Truma d'Rabbanan. Let's play about Truma's Ma'aser. Says Mara Rabbi Yisrael Chulei. Makashir Torah, what does it mean? It doesn't mean like the shiur d'oraisa. Now there is no shiur d'oraisa, but the shiur which is like the d'oraisa by Truma is 1/50th. So he's saying, because when he's saying that if he did Kashir it works, does it mean Kashir Torah or Kashir Chaverin? Like the Shir mentioned by the rabbis, and the Shir mentioned by the rabbis is anything between 1/40th and 1/60th. So Rabbi Yossi holds that where the first partner did a Kashir for both him and his friend, it works. What Shir is he talking about? Specifically the 1/50th? Because that is universal, and that we assume he is acquiescent to, or is even the 40th or 60th, which are less universal. In Tavdina Kashir Toicha, if you're going to say that whenever he does a Kashir Toicha, then it works. Later Rabbi Yossi Rabbanan. We have to sue Rabbi Yossi Rabbanan have a machlokas, because Rabbanan said, regardless of Rabbanan said it doesn't work for me to do for my friend. Rabbi Yossi says it does work. Mistam Rabbanan will also talk about a shiur Torah. Come and say it do work. Sorry. I'm getting mixed up between Rabbi Akiva and Chachamim. Rabbi Akiva says that it doesn't work. Akiva says the first shutav has no right to do for the second shutav. Chachamim says it does work. The first shutav can do for the second shutav. So now the Gemara says, so Rabbi Yossi said it depends. If it was kashir, then it works. If it wasn't kashir, it doesn't work. So now the Gemara says if when he says that kashir works, he meant kashir toicha, then Rabbi Yossi not like Rabbanan, because Rabbanan didn't differentiate. So he said it works in any case. No matter what the shiur is, too much, too little, makes no difference. So therefore Rabbi Yossi, after arguing on Rabbanan, say specifically where he didn't make it 50th, it works. However, in Tabdei Kashir, if you're going to make it like the shiur Chaverim, let's say Rabbi Yossi holds it works even if it's a 40th or a 60th, then Rabbi Yossi Rabbanan, then Rabbi Yossi is just explaining Rabbanan. He's not arguing about it. He's saying, just like Rabbanan gave leeway, I also give leeway. And what's the leeway which we give? The way we give is anywhere between a 40th and a 60th. Okay? So then, just like Rabbanan, we're not meticulous in describing shiur. He also is not really being meticulous. He's just explaining to them that it's within limitations. It's between a 40th and the 60th. B'shalo diber, when he didn't command. Avol hirsha, but if a Baal boss gives authorization, it's been beso to a member of his household, or a savda, or a slave, or shivchas, or a maidservant, or certainly to his partner. Litrom, trumos or truma, and their act creates a valid truma. Betel, what if he canceled though their agency? He said, you know what, yes I wanted you to be my agent to make truma, now I changed my mind. If he canceled the agency before taking up truma, ain't truma, so truma, the truma is not a valid truma. He still has time. If after his agents have taken up truma, he canceled their shlichus, it's over already. Truma, so truma, and therefore he has to abide by their having selected the truma and go along with that. Ask the Gemara. Let's go back to the Gemara. We are in the fifth narrow line on Tezayin Amud Aleph. See that, Mr. Zuger? 5 lines from the top of Tezayin Amud Aleph. 5 lines from the top.
So what's that?
Now it says you can cancel agency. He doesn't argue Rish Lakish. So Rish Lakish said, a person cannot cancel shlichus he already issued. Can't cancel an amazing thing, this Rish Lakish. Now, I don't remember it either. No. But here in the parentheses, it brings down Kedushin Daf Nun Tesam, but I certainly don't remember any such thing there. I agree with you. Yeah, I don't remember that from there, but that's what he says here. That is in the Bavli. So it says person can't cancel shlichus. So it says, well, you know what? You're right. A person can't cancel shlichus. This is talking about the potter according to Reish Lakish. We don't pass like Reish Lakish. According to Reish Lakish, the potter go shamal lechu kvar b'tzafa. It's a case where the guy was insubordinate, and that's why it doesn't work. Because the master said, go take off for the truma the fruit on the north. He took all the food on the south, so that's why it doesn't work. Okay? Says this, in other words, that's why you can renege on the shlichus, because it wasn't done properly. There's nothing to do. You can't renege. Now, the truth is, there are other ways of learning this, but we'll leave it at that for the time being. Let's go back to the Mishnah. The last line of the Mishnah. Hapolim ein lam reshus litrom. Workers do not have the permission to take truma off the balabasa stuff, chutz min hadrochos, except for people who are pressing wine. Why? Because they want to make sure that the truma gets off as soon as possible. Shehem metamis agasmiyah, because otherwise there are a whole bunch of tamei people walking through the wine press. You know, that's it. They're going to make the wine press tamei. So if they want to chap a rind as quickly as possible and take up truma, which should be torn, to give to the Kohen. Rabbi Yochanan, back to the Gemara. Rabbi Yochanan said, "Hadruchos." We're in the first not wide line now. Hadruchos, the people who pressed the wine, became a chochoba and shtiva erev once they went in the pressing process, backwards and forward. Well, backwards and forward is not wrong. Like an X. Across this way and across that way, over all the grapes that are in the wine press. Anybody else who's tummy can come and drink the wine. Because I assume that by that time we're already taken off truma. The pressers who are Talmidei Chachamim and know we have to chap a rind, they chap a rind before they've gone back and forth in the field, in the wine press, trying to squeeze out the wine. Ask the Gemara, what time did we learn? Workers who take truma off a pit of wine, ain't tumas on truma. Their truma is not a valid truma. On. However, if it was a small well, or others were dabbling in that truma, so then, or dabbling in that wine, I should say, then trumasam truma. So then the workers should go ahead and chaparine and make sure that the truma is taken off as soon as possible, so other people shouldn't be tampering and making stuff tummy. So it says the Gemara. You have ein trumas and truma? B'shach shchim bohem, yeah. Ein trumas and truma. You're right. No, so Pnei Moshe corrects it. The correction is from the Pnei Moshe. He changes it to what I read to you. Okay? So says tomorrow again, if it was a small bore, others were touching it, so the truma is truma. So that's one. The first one I didn't understand what's going on here. What does that mean? It's because others are dabbling in the wine that makes the truma truma. What do you mean by that? So, and if other people are not dabbling in the wine, so ain't truma so truma, then truma is not about truma. No, how does the fact that other people are dabbling in it make a truma or not? Right? Well, what's the difference? Certainly in our Mishnah we didn't draw such a distinction. We just said the people who are pressing should press ASAP in order to make sure that there's no possible tumah. Yet here we're making distinctions. It's a very strange thing. What's going on here? So it says Gemara, Mal Kedom. What's going on here? So it says Gemara, perhaps Kam B'yayin Kam B'shemen. Perhaps by wine you could do it immediately. ASAP. But by oil, you don't take off truma from the oil until you see people actually putting their hands on the oil and dabbling in it. Says more. Why? Why would you say that? Hu yain hu shemen. Well, isn't wine and oil equated? Aren't they exactly the same thing? Says more. No. Yain to masum matsuya. By wine, it's very prevalent it gets tummy because people are coming, to drink wine and taste it all the time. Whereas shemen zayis, there ain't that too many people are going to want to taste olive oil, especially in the case of mavarchim, that it's bad for a person to drink olive oil. So therefore, by wine, they let you take up truma ASAP in order to make sure to avoid any possible tumah. But by oil, they didn't let you take off truma ASAP. Rather, only people are dabbling in it, then they let you take off truma, but not otherwise. Okay? Tanya, we learned from when you take truma off the grapes, once you make a crisscross in stepping on them. That's when you take truma. From what point can we metame them? Was what time? When we say that it's okay, anybody can go be metame the grapes. There's no need to preserve their tar anymore. So it's big machlokes. He only wants to take off ma'aser sheni. Because Ma'aser Sheni is supposed to be Kadosh, in Yerushalmi. And therefore it has to be Tar. So therefore, how can you possibly allow Tumah in before he took Ma'aser Sheni? Beis Hillel says no. Ma'aser Sheni, even if it's Tumah, you redeem it and eat its value in Yerushalmi. So it's Nish Geferlich against Tumah. What would be Geferlich v'gat Tumah? Ma'aser Rishon. The Ma'aser goes Levi. And there, not because of the Ma'aser, but rather because the Ma'aser Rishon contains Trumas Meiser. Right, it's an additional 10. So therefore I say, you know what? It's not, says Beis Hillel, it's not Geferlich if the Meiser Sheni gets Tommy. You'll just redeem it. But it is Geferlich if the Meiser Rishon becomes Tommy because the Trumas Meiser is not susceptible to redemption. So therefore Beis Hillel says, Mukshir Motzin Eser Rishon, when you take out the first one already, then, when they take out the Meiser Rishon already, when they take on Ma'aser Rishon already, they can stop being makbid on whether it's going to become Talmud Torah afterwards, because that's the last thing they have to be makbid on. Rabbi Yossi said, "I look at the Beis Shammai, it looks like Beis Shammai." But the masses know Beis Hillel to allow Tumah to enter the field right after the Ma'aser Rishon is taken off. Rabbi Shimon said, "You know what? I'll make a compromise." Nirin Divrei Beis Shammai. I think Beis Shammai is correct. B'shas Mikdash when the Beis Hamikdash is standing, because then I want him to dafka bring up his Ma'aser Sheni crop to Yerushalayim. But the Beis Hillel's Ma'aser, but the Beis Hillel seems to be correct in our day and age, because no Beis Hamikdash to bring up the Bikurim anyway or any other precious material. The Chacham look at Divrei Zev, look at Divrei Zev. Let me say nobody's right. We learned so far. Not Rabbi Rabbanan, not Larry Meir. Ela motzi truma utrumas meiser umutamin esabor miyad. You know what? None of them are right. I said Rabbanan or Meir. I apologize. Not like Beis Hillel, not Beis Shammai. Rather, even before you take off meiser, rishon in its totality, as long as you've designated truma and trumas meiser, you can allow everything else to go to pot and everything else become tamei. Because that's the main thing you have to worry about, the truma and trumas meiser. Okay? From when can you take truma off of olives? Is tanoi tani. Some tanoim learns mishiat yevchinu, when you grind them. Now grinding is an interesting thing. You have to place the sign on the base at the top. From when can you take truma off of olives? From the time you grind them. Now, grinding means here that first they used to grind olives, then put them in the press, then grind them again, and then put them in the press again to get out the second oil. So one version said that you can take truma of zaysim once they're in the once they're ground, but the second time. Not the first time. These tanoi tani, some say mishat tanu, once they're in the press the first time. Now nichloman the marshitano. I understand according to the opinion it says they have truma once they're in the press. That's good, no problem. Elaman the rishat chiyuv that you can only take of truma once they're ground. It's a problem. That means you press them fully already once. Lochen and Rabbi Yochanan did Rabbi Yochanan already say had the ruchos when the pressers became shulchabim shtivayer metamim misapor miyad. Once they walk through and fro one time crisscrossing, so you can be matam immediately. So here too, we got to be afraid by olives. Once you press the whole batch of pressing, somebody's going to come and be matam the olives. How can you allow this to continue, right? Without having taken off truma. Now for sure, somebody's going to come be matam. Next thing you know, your opportunity will be lost. That's what we're going to say. We're going to say. One second. So we're going to repeat ourselves. So it says the Gemara, "Kam b'yayin, kam b'shemen," or "Kam yayin b'em shemen." By wine, people there, by oil not. It says more below hu yayin hu shemen. Isn't wine and oil the same thing? Ma bin yayin, ma bin shemen. Says more no. Yayin tumos matzuya. By wine, there's a lot of tumor prevalent. Shemen ain't tumos matzuya. By oil, there's not so much tumor prevalent. Says more no. It's prevalent to find tumah by both. The prevalence of tumah is not an issue here, right? Rather, the more people around. That's what it means. Like you're saying, by wine, because people are going to be drinking wine than there are by oil. Okay? Tani, we learned Rabbi Yossi ber Yehuda Omer in Mechotza. If you want to take off truma quickly, you want to short circuit the process to make sure to take off truma before anything becomes tomei. Maybe you bring olives in a basket. You put them under a very heavy stone. So this is like a first aid type of pressing, quickly on the fly. But and you do that all over them. Holechuba means you pound them, right? Like that. That's holech uba. Holech uba, back and forth, and then you can take truma. Okay, Amrulo, they said doesn't work. Ain't dom yuzei. You can't take truma the first time around off olives. It doesn't work. It has to be formally in a press. It can't just be pounded. According to the other bit we had before, already has to be in the second time around. Why is that? Because anovim dehos, the grapes are soft. The nose goes to the yain, and the wine flows out of them very easily. So once you crisscrossed it already once, you can take truma. However, the zeisim koshim, olives are tough. And the oil does not flow from them freely. So if you know to take truma from olive oil, you need to have a more advanced stage when you've already ground them and pressed them, not just pounded them with this little with this heavy stone, or ground them and put them in the olive press. And according to the other opinion, you even need to grind them a second time before they're susceptible to truma. Well, of course, we're not worried before that of tumah. Again, because people are not going to come near the olive presses as much as they will by the wine presses, and we will stop here for this evening.